Hi, everyone. My name is Rabindra Hayashi, and I'm the Events Production Coordinator at CAM. I'm so thrilled to be here with you today. We would like to acknowledge our wonderful co-presenters, which are organizations who serve and support diverse communities. For this program, we would like to thank our radical guide. Programs like CamFest 2021 and CAM's other year-round programs are made possible by our community of supporters around the world. Help us bring compelling and diverse Asian American stories to light. Donate or join as a CAM member at CAM's secure website, caamedia.org. For a limited time, new members can save 15% on our friend and supporter memberships using the promo code CELEBRATESTORIES. This film is eligible for our Audience Award. To vote, please click the link above the video player. Winners will be announced right after the festival. Thank you. You just watched Who is Luna Menoh, a film about, well, Luna Menoh and her exciting art as she experiments with both medium and message. Much like her art, the film is witty, unique, and at times a humorous look into the many ways that her process comes out in her art. I'm so thrilled to be able to welcome the filmmakers here today, so I'd like to welcome Jeff Mizushima, Tosh Burma, and of course, Luna Menoh. Welcome, everyone.
Welcome.
It's good to be here with you. So having seen the film, the first thing I would just have to say is I feel simultaneously very well informed and at a complete loss regarding to how the film was made. Can you tell us a little bit more about how this film came to be?
Some years. How many years, Jeff, to put this whole film?
12 years. You know, that's a really common question, Rabindra, that we get of how this whole thing started. I sometimes say it started when Luna was born, when she was conceived. That's when it started, and then we never stopped filming. But I think another question in that same ballpark is why did it take so long to finish? And that's part of the film, and so they're hand in hand the same thing. So it started with me, as I say in the film, in 2007, as just filming one of her Luna's bands, which is in the film, Jean-Paul Yamamoto. And I was doing that as for a client work. I worked for a record label, and the owner of this record label, Eeny Meeny Records, is the producer of the film, Reiko Kondo, and she's the one who put everything together. And she had me film Luna at the beginning for her press kit. Back in the day, bands had press kit videos and promotional materials. So I was doing that for Luna's band, and then that just kept going until a few years ago.
Okay.
The reason why it took so long, and maybe Luna can jump in, which is emblematic, or which represents her work. So what Luna tends to do from my point of view is that she is constantly filled with ideas and concepts, mostly regarding the fashion world, but she moves through all of these ideas through different mediums, and then at different points in the making of this film, we started out with it being a band movie, like a rock documentary almost, and then as she shifted to different mediums, it shifted the direction of the film. Because then when I thought it was a rock documentary, and then it shifted into painting and sculpture, and then performance art, which is sort of like a band. A band is performance art, basically. And then it shifted to these white collars section of the film, and it shifted to all these other things. So as the years went by, Luna can correct me, she can jump in and say I'm wrong about this, but she would evolve to where what she did a year ago or 6 months ago was no longer interesting to her. And she goes, don't put that in the movie. Do this. Do this instead. This is more interesting. And it's always what she's working on currently that's always the most interesting. So it would never be like, oh, what about the thing I just spent 2 years doing? Don't you want to just no. This is it. And that's here we are now. And it could still change. I'm not gonna rule out that this is not part of the documentary as well.
That's why we'll see you next year.
I think this is part of the documentary. Luna, do you want to jump in on this?
I think
what Tosh can do is explain more better than me.
I think Jeff is absolutely correct. Luna, by her nature and her artistic temperament, she does work on one project after another, from one medium to another. And she always works what interests her at the moment. She's not really that interested in history that much or the past. It's what she's doing now and maybe what's going to happen in the future. But we don't have really great hindsight of the future. We think perhaps the future, like, what should we do this evening instead of like what we're going to do tomorrow or next week. So she's a very present person.
What I wanted to say is what I'm doing is always the same, the one subject, but just to jump to the media one to another. So to me, it's like doing the same thing over and over and over again.
Yes.
But what I think I'm doing that whole thing is like a fashion aspect, fashion attitude towards my art performance. So in the fashion context, it's this, fashionable people say, oh, this year, this is really cool. And next year, oh, this, like for example, like, oh, the Greek image is so cool doing this. And then this time is like French is, it's like 1920 is popular. It's just like no reason one jump to one after another. So my attitude is very fashion attitude, but what I'm doing it just the same.
Yeah, her main theme is always clothing, or fashion, or what you think of clothing. So that is her theme in her visual art, her sculpture, her fashion shows, as well as her music.
Yeah, clothing. So it's always clothing the wearing, all like textile things. So it's just the same thing, but it's just a different approach to the one subject. So for some people, I think I'm doing a really different things, but it's basically, to me, I repeated myself till I die, I guess.
Same subject matter, different medium.
But for Jeff, it's like it's like a painting, and then he has to come to the exhibit, and then it just go to the music venue. It just is so busy, and Jeff need a different camera, different kind of gear all the time. I'm sorry.
Well, I'll say to extend on that, I find it interesting as you know the filmmaker part of me, of every medium that an artist chooses to go into. It requires a different way to tell that story, even though it's the same artist. Just by the medium, whether it's painting, music, performance art, there's a different way that you should approach it. So, for example, of the more prominent films about Asian artists that I've had to watch to help me formulate what this movie should be. So for these are the big heavy hitters that everyone already knows. So there's Cutie and the Boxer, which was nominated for Academy Award a few years ago. Then there's Jiro Dreams of Sushi, which everybody all knows. It's a very famous. And then there's the Kusama Infinity. And then there's another one that's not as well known, but it's called Made in Japan, and it's about this Japanese country singer. And then the last one is Mad Tiger, which is this Japanese underground punk band in Brooklyn. So all of these films, documentaries about different artists, depending on the kind of art and the attitude of them, you have to approach it differently. And in Luna's case, yeah, Luna does, as she says, yeah, there is a through line. There's a thread that connects all of her work together. But when she moves to these different mediums, to me, it changes the approach. So that's why the duration of this film, at one point, I wouldn't say evolved. It just changed. The tone of it changed. Like I said at the beginning, it started like a rock documentary, and there's a certain way a rock documentary, like a punk rock documentary, if you just group all those types of that genre together, there's a specific style that is involved in doing that. But then Jiro Dreams of Sushi is so elegant, and it's food porn, and it's just nice, and there's a lot of culture there. So yeah, that's why I would add to that it was really hard to find the tone and the template. And just one side note about all those films that I listed, which I thought was really funny and kind of significant to in this festival. All of those films about those Japanese artists, and I would say the sushi guy Jiro is an artist. They were all directed by non-Asians. I think this Luna documentary is the first about a Japanese artist that was directed by a Japanese American. Everyone else had a different. I think one of them was like a British guy, an Australian guy. Mad Tiger like had a hapa, but everyone else they're like white people that just directed that so they have this viewpoint of the Asian experience that I think is different from where I'm coming from. Although I am very like I wouldn't say I bring a culture to the point of view, but yeah, I just thought that was an interesting side note for this festival.
That is really interesting. You know, I didn't know that until you mentioned that. You know, when you're talking about the sort of different stylistic choices, like there are all sorts of points where it felt like it was a bunch of different genres at once. I mean, there was at one point where you said, you know, you mentioned that it was turning into, it felt like a YouTube channel in the documentary. And one thing that I wanted to know more about was because it required so many different things. The other thing that I noticed throughout the documentary, of course, is that there were so many cameras set up. So can you tell me a little bit more about sorting through footage? Because you must have had what was the process for that?
I guess that's towards me.
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry.
The process with the cameras, it goes along the same way with the type of film that I thought I was making at different years. So then from how I approach documentary and just film and narrative films, if I'm working with a cinematographer, these are the kinds of discussions we would have where, okay, what's the look of the film supposed to feel like? And then in back in the day, you would choose a film stock and you would choose the lenses and then that would form, you know, the style of the film. And then you do camera tests and all that stuff. So now that we're on a much lower budget with this, I use the camera as a film stock. So at the beginning, when I thought it was a rock documentary, I had a lot of zooms, a lot of kind of crazy how I would approach doing some punk rock. And then when it shifted to some more high art, when I was in art galleries, I was like, I can't do this same style. So I got to do different camera. And then with every single project that Luna was doing, I just used a different camera because I thought it was, there's no way I should use. At one point, I was using GoPros because I was like, okay, what she's doing now fits a GoPro. And then she changes, and then at the end of the day, we're looking at all the footage together. And we're just, how the hell? What are we doing? That's the explanation of why there's so many cameras.
That makes a lot of sense. Luna, this next question I'm directed more towards you. But what was it like to be simultaneously making art and having a documentary be made about it at the same time? How did you feel that affected, or how did that work into your process?
No.
We always felt comfortable or with Jeff around, you know, so it wasn't really like, there's a camera on us. We never felt that. I never felt that.
Yeah, I have to put the camera all the time, and then put it like inside and that. Then when I put the camera, I cannot go to the bathroom, so, so it's kind of really weird. But I'm comfortable. I just forget about Jeff is there.
That's really cool. A little bit then, Tosh, for you, since you know Luna's work obviously much better than anybody probably, and you've been with Luna for a really long time, what parts of Luna's work do you think really come out well in the documentary?
Oh my. I think, well, first of all, I think her character comes very strongly through the documentary, her personality. But then probably like visually would probably be her music on stage, or her on stage performing, as well as her quote unquote fashion shows, which are very dramatic and very theatrical. So I think those two mediums, her on stage doing her music as well as the fashion shows, come up very strongly and very well in the film.
I just don't want to have like a really documentary is based on format.
Mhm.
So always there is a format of the punk band documentary. There is a format of the artist, painter, and then performance. And I just want to. I don't want to be like somebody's interview and then admired how great artist Luna is, and on and on. And that is like really boring. So because a lot of documentaries how great the artist is. So
Yeah, there's no real like Luna in her studio working.
Mhm.
A voiceover talking about what she's doing.
yeah, so
There's nothing like that. So
yeah, so that I wanted to really avoid that part, and then also that I didn't really think about I am Japanese
Mhm.
living in Los Angeles. I never really think that way. So naturally, just like Jeff said, it's just that I even forgot about that Jeff's Mizushima part. Only Jeff is Jeff. So I thought that kind of myself is interesting to see through the documentary. How can I revealing my Japanese-ness
Mhm.
through that this movie.
And as someone else who's mixed race and half Japanese, I really appreciated that part was also worked in to the film as well. The film had a lot of surprises throughout the film. So for each of you, what was the most? I know that there was a long process, and so there were lots and lots of surprising moments. But what were some surprising moments for each of you?
that's a good question.
It's a process of the making movie.
Or within the making of the movie, or when you watched it?
Oh,
I didn't expect our relationship to be so exposed in the film as much.
yeah, I didn't know either.
So that was kind of a surprise. Like, oh, that's kind of personal.
Yeah, yeah, personal. It's like Luna without Tosh. It's like she's nothing.
No, you saw a different editor. No, but again, more of the personal aspects, and of course, there's scenes with her father who just passed away not that long ago. That's sort of a shock to see him on the screen. Stuff like that is very sort of bittersweet.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing us as a couple on the screen is sort of bittersweet as well.
So my different answer to that, because I'm not in it as much as they are, not as their how exposed they were to with their personal lives. My biggest surprise was that I finished it. I think that's the biggest shock. You know how if different creative people are watching this, or Rabinja, are you a filmmaker as well?
I am not, but I do writing, so.
Okay, so you're a creative, yeah. So any creative person can understand this. If you ever get a job with your creativity, whether you're an illustrator, music, composer, whatever, and then it's not paying that much, and so your person who's hired you says, don't worry about time. Take all the time you need to finish it. Because they think that's a psychological way of keeping you warm and safe and still creative. Well, when Reiko, the producer, told me that, take all the time you need, Jeff, I did. I did take all the time. So anyone who's watching this, who's going to hire me and then says, hey, take all the time you need, I will take all the time I need. So don't tell me that. Don't tell people to take all the time you need. Tell them, no, we need this done at the end of the week. If you don't finish at the end of the week, you're fired. Which is what ends up being in the film. But I just think that whole, I don't know if it's an idiom or just that phrase of just take all the time you want. Don't worry about, no, you need to worry about the time. Otherwise, it'll be 12 years.
12 years, really? That's possible.
On that note, that's a really Wonderful thought to end with. And unfortunately, we're really running short on time. But before we go, I just wanted to make sure that the audience knows where else they can learn more about the film. Is there a website or is some kind of social media handle?
Yeah, there's a website for Who is Luna Menoh, the film. That's www.whoisluna.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Luna, Tosh, and Jeff, thank you so much for taking the time to come speak today.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in and for watching this. As a reminder, you can vote for this film for the Audience Award. Please check out all the other films in the festival and enjoy the rest of your time. Take care.